Hello everyone, welcome back to our channel. In this video, I would explain about SSH in detail. SSH means Secure Shell. It is a secure communication protocol which enables two computers to communicate securely. The communication is encrypted between two computers. So in the diagram, I have shown a server and two clients. These two clients communicate with the server securely using some encryption. So this channel is encrypted channel which provides secure communication between the client and the server. What is encryption? Encryption is a process of converting some data to a ciphertext format. So that means it is a non-readable format. We cannot read that encrypted message directly. So to read the message properly, we should have a key to decrypt the encrypted message. There are two types of encryption, symmetric encryption and asymmetric encryption. In the symmetric encryption, we will use the same key for both encryption and decryption. And in asymmetric encryption, we'll use different keys for encryption and decryption. So this diagram explains both symmetric encryption and asymmetric encryption. So in symmetric encryption, we'll have some input data, and using encryption process, using some key, we'll get encrypted data. And if I want to get back my input data, that encrypted data will be fed to a decryption process using the same shared key, and we'll get our input data. So that means we are using a single key for both encryption process and decryption process. In asymmetric encryption, the encryption process and decryption process will use different keys. For example, if we use public key for encrypting the data, and we should have a corresponding private key to decrypt the encrypted data to get back our input data. So which encryption process is used by SSH? SSH uses both symmetric encryption and asymmetric encryption in different stages. So I'll explain in the next slide. This slide explains how SSH works in detail. We have a SSH client here and SSH server. There are mainly two steps in this process. The first step is establishing a channel between the client and the server. The channel is a symmetric encryption channel. That means the same key will be used for encrypting and decrypting the messages between client and server. So this is a symmetric encryption channel. So that we need to understand. So how exactly this symmetric encryption channel will be obtained between client and server? So they follow some of the steps. So initially the client initiates an SSH connection to the server. So SSH offers the latest version of the protocol like SSH2 that should be supported by client. If the client supports it, then it will go to the next step. So later the client and server will agree upon some of the algorithms. So these algorithms will be used to generate a symmetric key, means the shared key which supports the symmetric encryption between client and server. So the main algorithm is key exchange algorithm, which is KEX, means KEX, to generate a shared key. So explaining about that algorithm in detail is out of scope of this video. So what we need to understand here that the client and server will agree upon which key exchange algorithm will be used to generate a shared key that supports symmetric encryption channel between client and server. So in addition to the KEX, we also have two other algorithms. One is host key algorithm. So this algorithm will be used to verify the server identity. And another algorithm, HMAC algorithm. So this will verify the integrity of data. So whenever SSH client sends data to the server, so in addition to the data, it also sends a hashed code of that message. Using HMAC algorithm, it calculates the hash of this message. The message as well as the hashed code will be sent to the server. So in the server, it decrypts the message and it recalculates the hashed code using that secret key, which is a shared key between client and server. And if both hashes match, the integrity of the data is verified successfully, right? So once the client and server agrees upon the required algorithms to establish the channel, the servers will send a public key, which is a public host key to the client, and client will verify the identity using host key algorithm. So once the identity of the server is verified, it will store it inside SSH known host file. So this known host file contain all the hosts whose identity is verified by the client. So this is called like server authentication. So once the server identity is verified, then both will participate in generation of shared session key using key exchange algorithm. So these all 5 steps are used to create a symmetric encryption channel. So once the symmetric encryption channel is created between client and server, the next step is user authentication. So this can be done in two ways. One is using by password or a private key and public key approach. So in the password based approach, server asks the password to the client and client provides the password and server will verify the password. And once the password is verified, the user will be logged into the server. And in public key based approach, so the server will ask the public key and client will provide a public key to the server. And server will check whether the same public key is present inside the authorized keys in the server. So this key file, so this is an important file, authorized keys file. So this will contain all the authorized keys of the users who are trying to log into the SSH server. So once the client provides the public key, server will check whether the public key is present inside authorized keys or not. So once it is present, so what server does, okay, server will validate that, the public key is present and it will try to encrypt the message, encrypt some test message, and it will give that encrypted message to the client. And if the client has corresponding private key in the client side, then it should decrypt the data. And it will decrypt the data and it will send back the data to server, and server will validate that, okay, the client has corresponding private key to the public key and the user will be logged in. So these are the two steps for user authentication. Now we understood the two important steps in SSH. One is establishing a secure communication channel and second is user authentication step. So one thing to remember is that SSH uses symmetric encryption channel, but to establish this symmetric encryption channel, it uses a key exchange algorithm, and that algorithm internally uses asymmetric keys, means private keys and public keys of client and server, to generate a shared key. So the internals of the algorithm is not explained in this video. And one more thing is the user keys, like user private key and public key, which are used for user authentication. So they are only for user authentication. So they are not used for encrypting the channel between client and server. Means whenever SSH client some data after this channel establishment, all the data will be encrypted and decrypted using a shared key. So, and these keys will not be used for encrypting and decrypting the data. So these are only for authentication purpose. So this is how SSH works in detail.